as Goran unknowingly made a perfect segue into the next topic, now you can see why. The topic is Uncomplexing Sovereignty, why the EU must own its digital future. So, as the EU doubles down on digital sovereignty, this talk by these two takes a clearer look at what all that reliance really means and explores what a simpler, more in-control future could look like. With us today, my two colleagues from CROZ, Miro Čerkes, who started out in CROZ integrating Croatia with the EU through a huge project that we had back in that day, and then grew into a software architect. Can we have a big round of applause for Miro? And when I was talking to them before the conference and I asked them, okay, what do you want me to say about you in the intro? Jerry just said, just say that I've been here my whole life. So Jerry has been in CROZ his whole life. And he started as a developer and today is our director of sales and marketing, Ivan Jerry.
Thank you, Maria, for introduction. In addition to that, I can say that I really love Europe. I was born here, I've spent my entire life here, and I really consider myself to be lucky for that privilege. I was also lucky to be able to travel substantially all over the world, visit different countries and continents, and meet different cultures and religions. And still, and I'm aware that I'm very biased here, I believe Europe is the best place to live and to spend your life and to raise your kids. I will tell you a little bit about the reasons behind it. By the way, Happy Europe Day, everyone. It was 11 days ago. I'm sure you had a blast and you had a big celebration. Or you didn't even know that there is such a thing as a Europe Day, as I didn't before preparing for the session. So on 9th of May, 75 years ago, there was a big and important event in Europe. The Schuman Declaration was presented. That was the basis for what was later called European Coal and Steel Community, which was then the basis for what we know now today to be the European Union. Can someone guess what was the main motivation or the main reason or the primarily motivation to form such an alliance?
Make war never happen again by combining industrial resources.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty obvious. So it was 1950. I don't have any presents, but thank you. So the key motivation for forming such an alliance was to prevent future wars, to enable economic recovery and growth, to do the political integration within the continent, to have a common market, and to obviously increase the global influence of a community of countries rather than each country by its own. Along with that, Europe also gathered around some core values. And that's one of the reasons I think it's the best place to really to be alive and to have your life. So those are the core values around European countries gathered. Human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, rule of law, and respect for human rights. During all that time after the Second World War, Europe was heavily relying on its strategic allies, primarily the US, which was also a very common sense thing to do. But we are now witnessing the changes and disruptions in those long-year strategic alliances. There were two main areas where we were, and we are still relying on US, and that's military and defense and technology. We are witnessing those disruptions that I mentioned, and we probably need to react upon it. So what we did in CROZ, what we usually do when some triggers from the outside come in, we try to think about what to do next in order to keep the business continuity and resilience and to keep our organizations running. So my colleague Miroslav prepared and thought about it in a bit more details. He will tell you more about it. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Jerry. So with all these things that are happening, and especially in like the military and the IT, there is this new buzzword, new concept that is popping up all around the IT world. It's called like sovereign IT. And what I first want to do is just give you like a crash 101 course. What does it really mean? What do we mean when we say sovereign IT? So by definition, this is a technology ecosystem controlled by national laws. So this entails all the data within the IT systems, all the infrastructure, all the software, so basically everything that we use in today modern IT organizations. So imagine that every country requires its own version of AWS or Azure or whatever cloud, but it has to be built locally and it's governed locally and it only conforms to the laws of some nation state or some group of nation states, as it is the case in the European Union. Driver for this is geopolitics, obviously, because governments are starting to demand this local data storage and they are starting to like reject foreign cloud data providers in the sense that they say, you know, if you are processing data from the nation data about its citizens, for example, in the EU we have GDPR, we say, okay, if you're processing data, it needs to be processed in the data center that is on the territory of the EU. It's a similar thing with China, it's a similar thing with the United States. So geopolitics are starting to play a crucial role also in how we design, build, and operate our IT systems. And why are we starting to do this? It's not like because we want to create new market or something. It's because with this advent of the AI, which is heavily reliant on the data, the amount, the volume, and the quality of data that we have, data is becoming a new territory of global conflicts. So it is expected that in the future, whoever has like the strongest and the best AI models will be on top. And how do you get to have a stronger and a best AI model is, on one hand, you have to have the infrastructure like the power, and we heard this morning about the initiatives to build a lot of new data centers, bringing online the old shut down nuclear power plants to feed this huge demand for energy. But the other part of the equation is that we need data. And governments have recognized that, and they are starting to build walls around that data. And this brings us to a question whether this is necessity or will this hinder innovation in a sense. Because more and more nations now enforce these sovereignty laws, but on the other hand, it may risk fragmentation because a lot of stuff that we are doing now and how we can do it is because the world has been integrated. And we heard also in the previous talks that there is this strong trend of reverse globalization. So we are starting, in some sense, de-integrate some parts of the world and the global economy. So by the end of this talk, I want and hope for all of you that you will question and try to answer for yourself whether this is a proper shield for the European Union and also for the other nation states, or this is like some kind of a straitjacket that will just like hinder innovation and make us all not able to fulfill and solve the global problems that we heard like in this morning, like the global warming and all the other problems that civilization is facing right now, which are spanning these national borders and are like humanity problems. So whenever you have such localized laws, like for example GDPR, as I mentioned, and China's People Information Act, those laws usually they start look like more and more like digital border walls, and more countries, everybody now wants to control their own infrastructure. but not for the primary driver for this is political leverage. So this means that the kind of we can see it's not like still up fully, but we see that since nations are closing up, there are some new digital iron curtains appearing in the cloud space, which are like segmenting the world into some polarized zones. And every time when you have such situation in the past, we had like those iron curtains. This means that there is usually some conflict, some war happening, Cold War, where there are no like there is no like fire, there is no like direct conflict, but there are conflicts in the shadow. And for us, I think as an IT, it's important to establish some rules, rule of thumbs, how to navigate this new world where everybody is kind of like closing up, raising their shields, raising their borders, imposing some controls, and how organizations now have to adapt to stay resilient, to stay active and survive in this world. So in this talk, I'll try to give few guidelines and few rules that I personally and also we in CROZ believe are something that all organizations and our organization as well need to ask ourselves how to navigate in that world. So the first thing I would say is that it's important that we need to start treating our data flows as a supply chain. So for example, when we order something on the internet or do some procurement of some physical stuff, we really have to know all the like jurisdictional touch points, where the goods are handed, are there any customs to pay, are there any tariffs to pay? But we do not know that for our data. Our data is somewhere in the cloud, it flows left, right, center, and we really kind of hope that everything in the end will end up in the right place, but we actually, for a lot of our data, we don't know where it's flowing, where it's stored, how it's processed, who has access to it and stuff. So for us, and I think it's really important that we have to start treating our data flows as supply chains to know every point in place, within this virtual world where our data is changing, like ownership jurisdiction, who has access to it and who can do it. The second thing that we should take into account is that we have to start assuming that every alliance is temporary and that today's partner will tomorrow be your regulator. Now, I'm aware that this is maybe like a grim view of the world, but unfortunately, with all the things that are happening, we can see that this is the direction where the world is going. Whether or not we will be able to reverse that direction, it remains to be seen. But you know how they say, it's better to be prepared than be surprised by something that's happening. So the second point is that, assume every alliance is temporary. This doesn't mean that we should not form alliances. We should, but we have to plan for the situation where we are no longer allies. The third thing is that we should start demand sovereignty-proof contracts like exit clauses for legal shifts. Whenever we are doing some business outside of the EU or even with some other jurisdictions and countries, we should start accepting the fact that there is this sovereignty risk inherent in every business transaction, and we need to prepare for it. And one way how we can prepare for it, we can start planning for it and putting in contingency clauses into all of our contracts, all of our engagements and all of our agreements, so that, okay, how will both parties, or if there's a multilateral thing, how will every party in that contract, in that initiative behave if something changes in these fields? We have a lot of contingencies already built in our contracts. Nobody is currently looking into this, but this is something that we really strongly believe. This is for example, in a case when you are purchasing some software or assets, you have an option, to buy a subscription or to buy some perpetual license. Of course, the world is going into a subscription-based model, but whenever possible, still, if you have a perpetual license, if you have bought some product, some software, it's yours to use it, so that you cannot lose it if something changes. So that would be one also important thing to consider, and the behavior to adopt in this new Cold War. The fourth thing is that we should really separate this risk and thinking about this problem to the whole organization. So this means that we should decentralize our compliance, and we should embed the embed into legal and technical teams into all product units, so that we are capable to address and assess what are the risks on this field in every area of our business. So this is not something that is only a problem for lawyers or for technical people or for I don't know who in the organization. It really should be decentralized, and it should be spread across the whole organization. And the fifth thing is maybe I would say the grimmest of all of them, but be prepared. Prepare for parallel systems, worst case scenarios. One of the examples, for example, would be have air-gapped backups. All the data that you have in the cloud, have it also somewhere on premise, somewhere where it is secured, so your crucial data, know what is your crucial data. We saw in one of the presentations yesterday, a growing trend of repatriation of applications. So we already see that organizations are started doing something on this area, probably not motivated by this topic, but by raising costs of the cloud computing. The organizations are starting to adopt hybrid IT architectures and moving some data, processing some applications back into its own data centers. So this is a trend that we see that it will continue. Of course, we cannot close ourselves completely, because then we will not be able to provide the services and make money, to put it blindly. But we have to be prepared for the worst case scenario, and have really understanding what is our key differentiator, what is our core data that brings value to our organizations, and we need to protect that in any way we can. And hopefully, if you take anything from this talk, I would say that these 5 rules of thumbs, that you will all introspect yourself and within your organization start talking about these risks, and evaluate each and every organization for themselves how much this is a risk for you, or is it something that you for now want to ignore or whatever. But have it on radar. I would say that's the important message here. And then I would also like to, I already touched upon this, but who really owns this sovereignty risk? So that's one of the hardest questions. So is it legal? Is it security teams? Is it product development? Is it the board of the company responsible to take this into account? And on the other hand, is the increased complexity of all of this new decision points that have to be made, is it worth it? Is it even worth it to consider this risk now? Unfortunately, there is nobody that can answer that question for you except yourselves and the organizations yourself. And I would say that one North Star here should be just thinking, your cloud vendor roadmap will not save you. What is your plan if the laws change mid-quarter? We are all doing quarterly plannings and yearly plans and half-year and long strategic views. But what will we do, and how will our plans react if something changes in this front? Because this is not something that you can control. As we heard in the talk before, it's like geopolitics. It's based on trust. So the trust is really hard to gain and really easy to lose. How will your organizations, how will yourself, how will your organizations cope with such like, how they say, dancing landscape? Yeah. On the other hand, one also important topic that we need to address here is the obvious fact that this sovereignty will fracture global cloud efficiency. So, of course, if everything is connected, you get this huge benefit of the networking effect. But if you start fragmenting this cloud, I believe it will hinder innovation, and it will increase our cost because we now need to take this into account. We need to design our systems with that. It will cost us time, money, customers, clients, markets, whatever. And it will also increase complexity. And on this like technology landscape thing, the question that I would like all of you to ask is there value in building local version of Google? Here, Google being the example, but you can exchange it to any global technology provider, either like Microsoft, AWS, Azure, whatnot. Is there a value for some organization or for some nation or for some legal entity or groups of legal entities to build local version of like the cutting edge technology stuff? And by definition, this secure architecture that is compliant and that is sovereignty risk aware, by definition, it will probably be just a slower version of that, like the best providers that are there. And then the question is this worth it? Is there value in it? It doesn't have to be monetary value. It can be just value that you are alleviating that the sovereignty risk that I am talking about. And then the last question is this just a stopgap to help us sail these rough waters right now in these like changing times? Or is this just like a surrender to the idea that, we will have a globally integrated world as a humanity, which we started doing with the globalization? Or are we heading in a direction where we will reverse all of that and everybody will like huddle down in their own part of the world and we will just look to each other over some fences or through some iron curtains? Doing this, like reading a lot, I stumbled upon this term called like splinternet and balkanization, and believe it or not, it's a documented process, and the idea was taken with the stuff that was happening by the end of the 20th century here in this like former Yugoslavia, where you had like this union that dissolved into a lot of small like sovereign states. And what we now see on a global level is something that is starting to akin to look like that process, and they call it like the Splitternet 2.0, meaning that this global network that we have built in the last like 20, 30 years, connecting everything and interconnecting the whole world, we now see that this is starting to falling apart, and it's not maybe as strong as some of us wanted to believe that it is. And the question is that we all have to ask ourselves is, do we just surrender? Do we treat it as a stopgap and keep our faith that after these rough times there will be, again, reversing of that process and that we will continue integrating all the nations and everything on this that we have in this planet and really start solving global humanity level problems like global warming and stuff. With that in mind, I would just like to say that, offer my personal opinion, I think that it's a stopgap because we have as a civilization grew to accustomed to some things good things that happen with this strong networking effect that we have. And For example, Facebook has its own value, not because it's like a good software platform, for sure it is, but the value is that it, like every third human being currently living on the planet has their account there. So if you want to reach someone, there is a pretty good chance that you will find it on Facebook. And is there a value if everybody has its own private Facebook? I would say, and I would argue no, because the idea is that you have everybody else connected and sharing some common ground so that you can communicate and you can exchange ideas. And with that, with that thought, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm open to any questions if there are some.
I wanted to say there are questions, but there is a question. Would you say that sovereignty should be considered as a new type of a non-functional requirement when we build new systems and platforms?
In a true consultant way, I would say it depends. No, but really, yeah, if you are building a product or a service that has an international reach that is not built like for the local market, where you are crossing these sovereignty borders, then for sure, yes. And realistically, I don't think that there is any software out there or service that we are providing and building that doesn't span that border.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So for those who don't know me, I'm Martina Drvar. I work with the European Central Bank. So I just wanted to thank you all for profoundly touching my really intrinsic values of European. I'm also very proud to be Europe, working on European integrations for many years, and now going back to reality. So as a banking supervisor, I just want to share something which is public news in terms of sovereignty. Recently, we had one bank which was subject to sanctions from the EU with the Russian owners, and we had to close it. And the problem that we incurred as supervisors was that Microsoft denied access to the data of that particular bank. It's Amsterdam Trade Bank, if you want to Google for it. Why? Because according to American law, you cannot provide service to an institution under sanctions. That was an eye-opener, right? So I agree with you. We were building trust for 30 years, and reality is that it's gone. So this is just like something you have to preclude. So from all of the 5 points that you mentioned, I would, from my professional stance, I will vote for 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. So never build your organization on the foreign ground, which you don't really control, because all of these little aspects, right, even the legal one, actually doesn't work for you, especially when the bullies come into politics and, let's say, control the business in a particular geopolitical area. But maybe 6 would be that our partnerships are built on, let's say, mutual constraints. So for the Republic of Dubrovnik, whoever knows the history, they really made, their freedom but they were paying a lot to the Ottoman Empire, a lot of taxes. But in order to ensure that taxes will be paid from year to year, a set of young people from Dubrovnik were kept as hostages in Istanbul, right? To ensure that the new hostages will come next year with the taxes paid by Dubrovnik. So I think these mutual dependencies, I hold your values, you hold mine, for whatever the reason, is something that we will have to just negotiate on. It's a completely different, I think, business thing. But I support your really very, very important notion. And EU cloud, yes.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you, Martina.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes this session. We can have a big round of applause for my colleagues from CROZ once again. You guys are free to go, and I would invite our next speaker to join us up here.